The first time I noticed it, I assumed I had simply missed something. The motion alert appeared on the monitor for less than a second. A small yellow square blinked over camera 12, hallway B, second floor, and then disappeared before I could even move the mouse. When I pulled the footage back, the corridor was empty. Not recently empty. Just empty. Light steady. Carpet still. Every door closed. The motion sensor had triggered, but there was nothing in the frame. At the time, I didn't think much about it. I should have. Because after that night, the sensor on camera 12 only ever activated when I wasn't looking. The building where I worked overnight wasn't especially large, but it felt bigger after midnight. During the day it was an ordinary office complex, 4 floors of cubicles, conference rooms, and administrative departments. The kind of place where every hallway smelled faintly of coffee and printer toner. At night, though, the building felt hollow. Most employees left around 6. Cleaning crews finished before 10. By the time my shift began, the entire place had already settled into a quiet rhythm that only machines seemed to notice. Air conditioning humming behind ceiling vents. Elevator motors running periodic diagnostics. Security cameras quietly recording empty rooms. My job was technically security monitoring, but in reality it meant watching screens. 14 camera feeds. Door access logs. Motion alerts. The company stored a lot of sensitive records on site, so they liked having someone physically present overnight. Most nights, nothing happened. That was why they hired someone like me. Someone who didn't mind sitting alone for 8 hours watching hallways that never changed. The monitoring room sat on the 3rd floor near the elevator bank. It was a narrow office with no windows, just a desk and a wall-mounted array of monitors. 4 rows. Each screen showing a different part of the building. Lobby. Stairwells. Server room. Storage area. Hallways. The system highlighted movement automatically. Whenever a sensor detected motion, the corresponding camera feed would flash briefly with a yellow outline. Usually it meant something harmless. Cleaning staff finishing late. A door closing. Occasionally a stray insect passing in front of the lens. Most alerts lasted less than a second. But the one from camera 12 stayed with me longer than it should have. Mostly because I never saw what triggered it. Camera 12 covered a short corridor on the 2nd floor. 3 offices. A copy room. And a storage closet at the far end. It was one of the least interesting camera feeds in the building. No exterior windows. No elevator access. Just a narrow stretch of carpet and fluorescent lights. Nothing ever happened there. Which was why the alert stood out. When the yellow box blinked around the frame, I instinctively leaned forward. But by the time my eyes focused on the screen, it had already disappeared. The recording buffer allowed playback, so I scrolled back 10 seconds. Then 20. Then 30. The hallway remained perfectly still. No shadows. No flickering lights. No doors opening. I watched the footage twice before finally convincing myself the sensor had simply misfired. Sensors did that sometimes. Temperature fluctuations. Dust drifting through the beam. It wasn't unusual. Still, I kept glancing at camera 12 for the rest of the night. Nothing happened. The next night the same alert appeared again. Same camera. Same yellow box. Same brief flicker. But this time I was already looking at the monitor. Except I wasn't. Not exactly. I had turned away for a moment to check the door access logs. When I looked back up, the notification had just finished fading. I replayed the footage again. Empty hallway. Same as before. After that, I started paying closer attention. Not obsessively. Just enough to notice patterns. And the pattern became clear within a week. The motion sensor on camera 12 never triggered while I was watching it. Only when my eyes were somewhere else. The realization came slowly. At first it felt like coincidence. There were 14 screens. It wasn't unusual to miss something. But after several nights the pattern became impossible to ignore. Every time I looked down to write a note. Every time I checked another camera. Every time I turned my chair even slightly away from the monitor wall. That was when the alert appeared. By the time I looked back, the hallway was empty again. One night I decided to test it. Around 1:30 a.m., when the building was at its quietest, I stared directly at camera 12 for almost 10 minutes. Nothing moved. The corridor looked exactly the way it always did. Still. Silent. The fluorescent lights hummed softly above the ceiling panels. I leaned back slightly and picked up my coffee. The moment I glanced down at the cup, the yellow box flashed. I looked up immediately. The hallway was empty again. At that point, the situation still had rational explanations. Sensors weren't perfect. Lighting fluctuations could trigger them. Air currents sometimes carried dust particles through the detection zone. Still, something about the timing bothered me. Not the alerts themselves. The precision. They only occurred when my attention shifted. Never before. Never after. Always during. After 2 weeks, I started leaving camera 12 full screen on one of the monitors. If something was actually moving in that hallway, I wanted to see it happen. For 3 nights nothing triggered. The sensor remained silent. The corridor remained empty. The system behaved exactly as it should. And then, on the 4th night, the alert happened again. I hadn't moved. I hadn't looked away. I had simply blinked. The yellow square appeared for less than a second. I leaned forward immediately. This time the system had recorded something. Not movement. Just a brief distortion in the video. Like static. The image had shifted slightly to the left. Only a few pixels. Then returned to normal. I replayed the footage several times. The distortion lasted maybe 2 frames. Too quick to identify. Too precise to ignore. That was when the building started feeling different. Not dangerous. Just aware. When you spend enough nights alone in a quiet place, you develop a sense for its normal behavior. The sound of air moving through ducts. The way fluorescent lights buzz when the temperature drops. The faint click of elevator relays resetting. After that night, those sounds felt sharper. More noticeable. Like the building had begun listening back. The motion alerts became more frequent. Still only from camera 12. Still only when I wasn't looking. But now they happened several times per shift. Each time I checked the footage, the corridor remained empty. Except once. That was the night I finally saw something change. The alert triggered around 2:40 a.m. I was reviewing door access logs at the time. When I looked up, the yellow box was already fading. I opened the playback window immediately. The corridor appeared empty. But one detail was different. The door to the copy room was slightly open. I stared at the screen. I was certain that door had been closed earlier. Not partly closed. Completely closed. I rewound the footage again. The door had opened sometime between the alert trigger and the moment I started playback. But the recording never showed it moving. After that, the pattern changed again. Now when the sensor triggered, something in the hallway was always slightly different. A door open. A chair visible inside an office that hadn't been there before. Once, a stack of boxes outside the storage closet that hadn't been there the previous hour. The camera never recorded these things happening. They simply appeared. Between frames. Between moments when I wasn't looking. The realization came slowly. And once it did, it became impossible to ignore. The motion sensor wasn't detecting movement. It was detecting change. That meant something was moving through the hallway. Just not while I was watching. The climax happened 3 weeks later. It was just after 3 in the morning. I had already seen 4 alerts that night. Each one leaving some small change in the corridor. By then I understood the pattern. Whatever was triggering the sensor moved only when I wasn't looking. So I did something different. Instead of watching the monitor directly, I turned my chair slightly. Just enough that I could see camera 12 in the reflection of the dark server cabinet beside my desk. The reflection blurred the image slightly. But it still showed the hallway. Still showed the motion sensor box when it triggered. I waited. Nothing happened for several minutes. The corridor remained still. And then the alert appeared. In the reflection. The yellow box flashed. And in the same instant, something moved across the hallway. Not a shadow. Not a distortion. A shape. Human height. Crossing the corridor quickly between the office doors. I turned toward the monitor immediately. The hallway was empty again. The aftermath was quieter than I expected. Nothing dramatic happened after that. No alarms. No doors slamming. Just the same silent building. But now the sensor triggered more often. Sometimes every few minutes. Each time leaving some new detail in the hallway. Something that hadn't been there before. I left that job a month later. I told the company I had found another position. Something daytime. Something with people around. They didn't ask many questions. Night shifts tend to wear people down eventually. I still think about that hallway sometimes. Not the alerts. Not the doors opening. Just the moment in the reflection. Because when I saw the figure cross the corridor, it wasn't moving randomly. It was moving carefully. Like someone trying not to be seen. And what unsettles me most isn't that it only moved when I looked away. It's that when I watched the reflection long enough, I realized the sensor only triggered when it thought I wasn't looking.